A young single mum stepped into a grand country estate for what she thought was just a cleaning job interview, but the moment her eyes landed on an enormous oil portrait above the fireplace, her world tilted on its axis. Heart hammering, she turned to the elegant older woman beside her and whispered, "Ma'am, why is the father of my little girl staring down at me from your wall?" Before we dive in, drop a comment below and tell us what city or town you're watching from tonight. And when we reach the end, let us know how many out of 10 you'd give this one. Now, settling, Chloe Bennet stood at the wrought iron gates of Blackwood Hall, nerves twisting in her stomach like wet rope. The sprawling Georgian manor loomed ahead of her, all honey-colored stone and ivy. The kind of place you only ever saw on Sunday evening dramas at 26, with a 4-year-old daughter named Lily, and a redundancy letter still burning a hole in her handbag. Chloe had never imagined she'd set foot somewhere like this. But the restaurant in Leeds where she'd waitressed for 3 solid years had shut without warning, the week before Christmas, and rent didn't pay itself. Tidbit 4, live-in daily housekeeper. Historic estate outside Harrogate had felt like a lifeline sent from heaven. She smoothed down her best charity shop blouse, pressed the buzzer, and waited. The heavy oak door swung open to reveal a stern woman in her 50s, hair scraped into a flawless chignon, looking every inch the headmistress Chloe had dreaded at school. "You'll be Miss Bennet," the woman said, scanning her from scuffed shoes to nervous smile. "I'm Mrs. Hargreaves, housekeeper. Follow me, and please keep your voice down. Lady Margaret dislikes unnecessary chatter." Inside, Chloe felt the air change. Cool, expensive, scented faintly with beeswax and old roses. A double staircase swept upward beneath a chandelier the size of a small car, and the black and white marble floor reflected her anxious face back at her like a judgmental mirror. "This is massive," she breathed before she could stop herself. Mrs. Hargreaves shot her a look sharp enough to slice bread, though the corner of her mouth twitched. Almost said. They wound through corridor after corridor until they reached a sunlit morning room. There, in a high-backed chair by the window, sat Lady Margaret Ashford. 60 if she was a day. Spine straight as a ruler, silver hair swept into perfect waves, pearls glowing softly at her throat. "Lady Margaret, this is Chloe Bennet," Mrs. Hargreaves announced. The older woman lowered her bone-china teacup and studied Chloe the way an art dealer might study a painting. She wasn't sure it was genuine. "Deuce it, Miss Bennet." Chloe perched on the edge of an antique chair, hands clasped tight. "Have you experience as a daily housekeeper?" Lady Margaret asked, voice crisp as autumn leaves. "Not exactly, ma'am," Chloe admitted. Deciding truth was her only weapon, but I've waitressed in a mad busy brasserie in the city centre for 3 years. I can scrub, polish, organize chaos, and smile while someone's shouting at me about cold chips. Plus, I've got a 4-year-old, so I am basically an expert at cleaning one mess while another is being joyfully created right under my feet. One elegant eyebrow rose. "A daughter?" "Yes, ma'am. Lily. She'll be with my maid Sophie during the day. It won't interfere, I swear." Lady Margaret took a slow sip of tea, eyes never leaving Chloe's face. The silence stretched until Chloe's palms began to sweat. Then, astonishingly, the older woman smiled, small but warm. "I value honesty, Miss Bennet, and I rather admire women who refuse to be crushed. You're hired. Mrs. Hargreaves will sort your duties." Chloe blinked, stunned. "Just like that." "I'm rarely wrong about people," Lady Margaret said, rising with effortless poise. "Something tells me this house could do with a bit of your particular steel. Don't prove me wrong." Joy surged through Chloe so fiercely she nearly floated down the endless corridors as Mrs. Hargreaves rattled off schedules and rules. She was still grinning when they reached the long portrait gallery that ran the length of the East Wing. Generations of Ashfords glared or smiled down from gilded frames, stiff collars, hunting pinks, Victorian lace, and then Chloe stopped, dead, her breath snagged in her throat. In the very center hung a huge canvas, a young man in his mid-20s, leaning casually against a library table, dark hair falling over his forehead, deep brown eyes crinkled in a half-smile, that unmistakable dimple in his chin, the same dimple Lily had. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Miss Bennet. Mrs. Hargreaves' voice came from very far away. Are you quite all right? You've gone terribly pale. Chloe couldn't speak. Blood roared in her ears. 5 years. 5 years of wondering, of sleepless nights, of telling Lily her daddy had gone traveling. 5 years since Dee kissed her goodbye after the best summer of her life and simply vanished. It was him. Footsteps approached. Lady Margaret appeared at the end of the gallery, watching with sharp eyes. Chloe lifted a shaking finger toward the portrait. Her voice came out steady only by some miracle. Ma'am, why is the father of my daughter hanging on your wall? The silence that followed could have crushed stone. Lady Margaret's face drained of color. Her gaze darted from Chloe to the portrait and back again. Mrs. Hargreaves gave a strangled gasp, hand flying to her mouth. Mises, ar gravis, Lady Margaret said, low and urgent, every word edged steel. Clear this corridor. Now. Staff scattered like startled pigeons. Doors slammed. In moments, the gallery stood empty except for the 2 women and the painted smile of the man who had ruined and remade Chloe's life. Lady Margaret turned fully to Chloe, emotions storming across her normally composed face. You will come to my study this instant, Miss Bennet, and you will tell me everything. Chloe could only nod, eyes still locked on the portrait as they walked. The study smelled of old books and cedar. Lady Margaret closed the door with deliberate care, then poured herself a glass of water with hands that trembled just enough to betray her. That, she said, nodding toward the gallery, is my son, James Ashford, heir to the estate and to Ashford & Co. Chloe gave a bitter laugh. Funny. The man I knew called himself Jamie. Just Jamie. No title, no estate, just a rucksack. And a story about needing to find himself. Lady Margaret closed her eyes briefly. Tell me from the beginning. So Chloe did. 5 years ago she'd been pulling pints and pouring flat whites in a little indie cafe in York when a gorgeous lad with a soft Devon accent and laughing eyes started turning up every morning. Said he was between chapters, traveling light, working bar jobs, and fruit picking to fund the next train ticket. 3 perfect weeks of picnics by the U's, late-night chips on the city walls, promises whispered under summer stars. Then one morning his side of the bed was cold and he was gone. No note. No trace. 2 weeks later she'd stared at a positive pregnancy test and cried until she was sick. Lady Margaret listened without interruption, growing paler with every word. You're certain it's him? She asked at last, voice barely above a whisper. I stared into that face every day for 3 weeks, and I've stared into its miniature version for 4 years, every time I look at my daughter. Same eyes, same wanky smile, same dimple. I'm certain. Lady Margaret sank into a chair as though her legs had given way. My husband died 6 years ago, James. He fell apart. Side-A, cold and tea. Breathed under the weight of the family name. One morning he packed a bag and left. Said he needed to find out who he was when no one expected anything of him. We thought he was wandering Europe. He'd drink sometimes. Always vague. He never mentioned York. Never mentioned you. She looked up, eyes wet. He doesn't know about the child. No, Chloe said flatly. He disappeared before I could tell him. And how do you find someone who never gave you his real name? Lady Margaret pulled out her phone with shaking fingers when Chloe showed her the lock screen photo. Lilies in a plastic tiara ice cream smeared across her grinning face. A broken sound escaped the older woman. My God. She's the image of him at that age. So you believe me? Yes. Lady Margaret handed the phone back, surreptitiously dabbing her eyes. And now we have rather a large problem. Chloe folded her arms. I've been living the problem for 4 years. What's yours? James is coming home. He rang 2 days ago. Said he's ready to come back to Yorkshire. Take his place in the company. He arrives this Friday. The floor seemed to drop away. He's going to walk in and find me polishing his silver. Indeed, Lady Margaret said grimly. And he's going to learn he has a daughter. Good. Chloe snapped. He should know Lily deserves a father. I agree completely, but we must handle this carefully, for the child's sake. Chloe hated that the woman was right. Bring Lily tomorrow. Lady Margaret continued, voice catching on the word granddaughter. Let me meet her. Let me be certain with my own eyes. Then, when James arrives, we tell him together. Chloe exhaled shakily. Fine. But 2 conditions. You treat my daughter like the princess she is, not some embarrassing secret. And when he walks through that door, I'm the one who tells him. He owes me that much. Lady Margaret extended her hand. Done. They shook on it. 2 women bound by the smiling ghost in the gallery. Walking out past that portrait again, Chloe paused and looked straight up at Jamie Nolasnim's painted eyes. Better brace yourself, Jamie Ashford, she muttered. Because Karma is 4 years old, calls me Mummy, and she's about to meet her daddy. For the first time all day, Chloe smiled. Small, fierce, and ready. Chloe let out a shaky laugh, despite the madness of it all. You're awful. I'm realistic, Sophie grinned, giving her a playful nudge. Now, come on, eat something. Tomorrow, you walk back into that posh pile, and you show Lady Margaret that Chloe Bennet doesn't do backing down. That night, Chloe barely slept. She lay staring at the cracked ceiling of that tiny flat in Headingley, playing the coming day over and over in her head like a film on loop. Morning came too soon. She woke Lily gently, brushing sleepy curls from her face. Morning, little love. Today, we're going on an adventure. Mummy's taking you to the big house where I'm going to work. Lily rubbed her eyes. Will there be swings? Chloe smiled. I reckon so. Half an hour later, Lily was in her best butterfly dress and little denim jacket, clutching Chloe's hand as they caught the bus out toward the Dales. When the gates of Blackwood Hall came into view again, Chloe's stomach flipped, but having Lily's warm little palm in hers made her feel 10 feet tall. Lady Margaret was waiting at the front door herself. No Mrs. Hargreaves in sight. She looked paler than yesterday, hands twisting together until she saw Lily. Then her face softened in a way Chloe would never have believed possible. Hello, darling, she said, crouching stiffly to Lily's height. You must be Lily. Lily promptly hid behind Chloe's legs. It's all right, sweet pea, Chloe murmured. Say hello? A tiny voice squeaked. Hello? Lady Margaret's eyes filled instantly. You're even more beautiful in person. Would you like to see the gardens? There's a proper wooden swing. Lily's shyness vanished at the word swing. 10 minutes later, she was racing across the velvet lawn, shrieking with laughter while Lady Margaret pushed her higher and higher, the woman's face glowing in a way that made Chloe's throat tight. When Lily ran off to investigate a flower bed, Lady Margaret sank onto the stone bench beside Chloe. She's perfect, she said quietly, dabbing discreetly at her eyes with the linen handkerchief. You've done a magnificent job, Chloe. Truly. Chloe shrugged, suddenly shy. Just did what mums do. Lady Margaret watched Lily chase a cabbage-white butterfly. James wasn't always lost. Before his father died, he was steady, kind, driven. After the funeral, something inside him snapped. The estate, the company, the title. It all felt like a noose. Running was the only way he could think to breathe. Doesn't make lying to me all right, Chloe said, voice low but firm. No, Lady Margaret agreed at once. It doesn't. But perhaps it explains. He wanted to be someone who wasn't suffocating under the Ashford name. Instead, he saddled himself with a far heavier secret. They sat in quiet accord. Lily's gigglies drifting on the breeze. Then hurried footsteps crunched across the gravel. Mrs. Hargreaves appeared, flushed and flustered. Lady Margaret, ma'am. The driver just rang. Mr. James's flight landed early. He's on the motorway now. He'll be here in under 15 minutes. Chloe felt every drop of blood leave her face. Already? Lady Margaret stood so fast, her pearls swung. He wasn't due until tomorrow. Change of plan, ma'am. He's coming straight from the airport. 15 minutes. Chloe's heart tried to climb out of her chest. Lily, come here. Love, she called, voice only wobbling a little. Lily scampered over, clutching a daisy chain. Chloe scooped her up, arms suddenly needing the weight of her daughter like armor. Lady Margaret touched Chloe's elbow. We can leave. Postpone this. For a second, Chloe considered it. Then she looked into Lily's brown eyes, so like his, and felt 5 years of anger solidify into steel. No. I've waited long enough. Lady Margaret gave a short, proud nod. Then we'll meet him in the drawing room. Mrs. Hargreaves. Tea, please, and quickly. Minutes later, Chloe sat on a velvet sofa, Lily on her knee, fiddling with the daisy chain. Lady Margaret ramrod straight in her armchair. The grandfather clock ticked like a bomb. Grava crunched outside. Cardos, a low male voice, thanking the driver. Footsteps across the hall, confident, familiar. The drawing room doors opened. James Ashford stepped in, older, sharper, Italian suit sitting perfectly on broader shoulders, wheeling a small suitcase. He smiled at his mother first. Mum. The smile died the instant he saw Chloe. The suitcase hit the parquet with a thud. His face went chalk white. Chloe rose slowly, shifting Lily behind her. Hello, Jamie, she said, voice dripping ice. Or do you prefer James these days? He stared as if she were a ghost. Chloe. How did I find you? She gave a brittle laugh. I didn't. I came for a cleaning job. Imagine my shock seeing your smug face smirking down from the wall. Cleaning job? He looked helplessly at his mother. Sit down, James, Lady Margaret ordered. Voice like flint, and start explaining. He obeyed like a schoolboy, sinking into an armchair. Eyes never leaving Chloe. 5 years ago, Dad died, and I fell apart. He began, voice rough. I couldn't breathe here. So I ran, used a fake name, traveled, tried to work out who I was when no one wanted the Ashford heir. I never meant. You lied to me, Chloe cut in. Told me you had nothing. No ties, when you had all this waiting. I was going to come back, tell you everything, but you didn't. Lady Margaret stepped forward. James, there's something far more important. He frowned. What? You have a daughter? The heir left the room. James turned to stone. What? Chloe pulled out her phone, opened the photo of Lily in her plastic tiara, and held it out. Meet Lily. 4 years old. Yours, E. He took the phone with shaking hands. Tears filled his eyes instantly. Oh my God. She looks just like you, Chloe finished flatly. Everyone else noticed. You weren't around to see it. He couldn't speak, just stared at the screen, then saw footsteps pattered in the corridor. Mummy. Lily appeared in the doorway, pink backpack bouncing, cheeks flushed from the garden. She spotted the stranger and ducked behind Chloe's legs, peeking out. James made a broken sound and staggered back against the chair, tears streaming. Lily gave a shy little wave. Hachiyo. He lifted a trembling hand in return, unable to form a single word. Lady Margaret knelt carefully. Lily, love, would you like to go with Mrs. Hargreaves? For chocolate biscuits, the ones with the Smarties on top. Lily's eyes went saucer wide. Can I, Mummy? Chloe nodded, throat tight. As Mrs. Hargreaves led Lily away, James sank to his knees on the antique rug, shoulders shaking, staring after the little girl who had just changed his entire world. Chloe nodded. Go on then, love, but don't be all day. Lily scampered off with Mrs. Hargreaves, crumbs already on her cheeks, and the second the door closed behind them, the air in the drawing room turned electric. James collapsed back into the armchair as though someone had cut his strings. She's perfect, he whispered, voice cracking. Absolutely perfect. Chloe said nothing. She simply watched the man who shattered her heart 5 years earlier finally meet the consequences he spent half a decade dodging. Lady Margaret broke the silence. James, go and sort yourself out. Splash some water on your face. You look like you've been dragged through a hedge backwards. He nodded numbly, stood on unsteady legs, and disappeared upstairs. "He's in shock," Lady Margaret murmured, sinking into a chair. "Join the club," Chloe replied, deadpan. "I've had for years." "He's had 4 minutes." Lady Margaret gave a small, rueful smile. "You're steel." Chloe Bennett, I didn't get the luxury of falling apart. A minute later, Lily bounded back in, one chocolate biscuit in each fist and a brown smear across her grin. "Mommy, look, 2 whole ones." Chloe wiped the crumbs away with her thumb. "You little gremlin. Want to burn some of that sugar off in the garden before we catch the bus?" Lily was already halfway to the French doors. Outside, the late morning sun lit the lawns gold. Lily darted from swing to flower bed to the little fountain, a whirlwind in butterfly print cotton. James appeared on the terrace, face washed, hair combed, eyes still read. He hovered at the top of the steps, hands in his pockets. "Who's watching?" "She never stops," Chloe said quietly. "Gets that from you, I reckon," Lady Margaret answered. James came down the steps slowly, like he was approaching a deer that might bolt. Lily noticed him and paused, head tilted. He crouched a few feet away. "Hiya, Lily." "Still like swings," she nodded, suddenly shy again. "Wanna push?" Lily glanced at Chloe for permission. Chloe gave the tiniest nod. James lifted her onto the wooden seat, as though she were made of spun sugar, and began to push. Gentle at first, then higher as Lily's giggles rang out like bells. Chloe stood with arms folded tight, heart knit knots. It hurt to watch, but it hurt in a strange, almost hopeful way she wasn't ready to name. James, concentrating on the swing, didn't see the enormous stone gnome half hidden in the grass. His heel caught it. Arms windmilled. He went down hard on his backside with an undignified yelp. Chloe barked out a laugh before she could stop herself. Smooth, Jamie, very graceful. Lily pointed and howled with laughter. The man fell over. James looked up from the lawn, grass stains on his posh trousers, and grinned sheepishly. That gnome started it. Even Lady Margaret had to hide a smile behind her hand. "She's got your laugh," she murmured to Chloe. "Exactly the same as his when he was small." Chloe didn't answer, couldn't answer. Eventually, the sun climbed higher and Chloe called time. "Lily, love, shoes on, bus to catch." Lily's face fell. "But I wanna stay. We'll come again soon." Lady Margaret promised quickly, looking to Chloe. Chloe gave a reluctant nod. "Maybe." As Chloe collected Lily's tiny backpack, James approached. "Cautious." "Chloe." "5 minutes, please." Chloe glanced at Lady Margaret. "Could you take Lily for one more biscuit raid?" Lady Margaret held out her hand. "Come on, princess. Let's see if Cook's made the strawberry ones yet." The second they were alone, James exhaled, like a man facing a firing squad. "I don't even know where to begin. How about with why it took you 5 years to stop being a coward?" Chloe suggested, arms crossed again. He winced. "I know I ruined everything. Those 3 weeks in York, they were the realest thing I've ever felt. I was going to come back, tell you who I really was, but you didn't. I was terrified. And then months turned into years, and the longer I left it, the harder it got." He met her eyes. "I never stopped thinking about you." "Spare me the rom-com script, James. Let me be in her life. Please. I'll do whatever you ask. Go at whatever pace you set." Chloe studied him for a long moment. "It'll be slow. My rules. You Dante get to swoop in like some fairy tale prince, because you've finally grown a conscience." "Anything," he said instantly. Mrs. Hargreaves appeared at the terrace doors, holding the cordless phone. "Mr. James. Miss Vanessa is on the line. She sounds upset." "Upset." The color drained from James's face. "Vanessa," Chloe repeated, eyebrow arched. "Who's Vanessa?" James looked like he wanted the gnome to finish the job and bury him. "It's complicated. Uncomplicated. Mrs. Hargreaves, never one to miss palace gossip, supplied helpfully. Miss Bunny Sarid." His fiancée, the garden went deadly quiet except for the distant squeak of the swing. Chloe stared at him. "You're engaged." "I was going to end it. I swear. Save it." Chloe's voice could have frozen the fountain solid. She turned toward the house. "Lily, we're going." "Now." Lily came running, biscuits clutched like trophies. Lady Margaret appeared in the doorway, reading the situation in one glance. "Thank you for having us, Lady Margaret," Chloe said with icy politeness. "But I think we'll be off." "Chloe?" "Wait," James started. "No. You're still running, James. Just in a better suit." She scooped Lily up and strode through the house without looking back. The front door shut with a finality that echoed round the marble hall. Lady Margaret turned to her son. "Engaged?" James dragged both hands down his face. "Mum, I can. Save the explanation for tomorrow morning, because Vanessa Reed just pulled onto the drive." Next morning, Blackwood Hall buzzed like a kicked beehive. Maids polished silver that was already gleaming, whispering behind their hands about secret daughters and furious fiancés. James stood in the study, phone in hand, trying and failing to ring Vanessa off. Before he could press call, tires screeched on gravel. A cherry-red Aston Martin skidded to a halt. Out stepped Vanessa Reed, legs for days, blonde hair glossy as a magazine cover, sunglasses the size of dinner plates, designer handbag swinging like a weapon. "Darling," she swept into the entrance hall, air kissing the space beside his cheeks. "I've missed you. We have so many wedding details to finalize." "Vanessa, we need to talk in a minute, sweetheart." She spotted Lady Margaret. "Margaret, darling, you look divine." Then her gaze landed on Chloe, who had, against every instinct, been persuaded by a very persuasive phone call from Lady Margaret to come back one last time, for Lily's sake. Vanessa's eyes raked Chloe from head to toe. "Oh, the help has arrived early." Chloe smiled, sharp as a knife. "Tate, se, me." Head bottle washer and, apparently, surprise baby mama. "Lovely to meet the fiancé I didn't know existed." Vanessa's head snapped toward James' fiancé. James opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Lady Margaret cleared her throat. "Perhaps the drawing room. I've got time," Vanessa snapped, arms folded. Chloe shrugged. "Actually, I haven't. Lady Margaret, thank you for the opportunity. But I quit." "No, James," and his mother said together. Vanessa's voice climbed an octave. "Will somebody please tell me what the hell is going on?" James took a breath that shook. "Vanessa, I can't marry you." The hallway fell silent enough to hear the grandfather clock tick. Vanessa blinked. "Sorry. I'm ending it." "I'm sorry." She laughed, high and brittle. "You're joking. The invitations are printed, James. My mother's already booked the string quartet." "I know, and I'm sorry." But Vanessa jabbed a manicured finger toward Chloe. "Because of her. You're leaving me for the maid?" Chloe stepped forward, eyes blazing. "First, I'm not the maid anymore. Second, he's not leaving you for me. He est leaving you because he est a spineless liar who only just discovered consequences have dimples and call him daddy." Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a startled goldfish. Lady Margaret coughed into her fist to hide what was definitely a laugh. Chloe turned on her heel. "Lily, love, we're going home." James reached for her arm. "Chloe." She looked at his hand until he removed it. "Touch me, and you'll need a new hand and wit tat." Chloe Bennet walked out of Blackwood Hall, daughter on her hip, head high, leaving the air, the fiancé, and the stone gnome in stunned silence behind her. Vanessa's eyes narrowed to slits. "If you humiliate me in front of the entire county, James Ashford, I swear on my life you'll regret it. Daddy's got half the broadsheets on speed dial and the other half on retainer. I can have your precious Ashford and co. trending for all the wrong reasons by tea time." James went white, but his voice didn't waver. "Then do your worst. I'm still not marrying you." "James," Lady Margaret started, worry creasing her brow. Vanessa flashed a venomous smile. "Fine. Watch your little empire crumble. She snatched her sunglasses and And you? She spat at Chloe. Enjoy the scraps while they last. Men like him always crawl back to women like me. Chloe gave a soft, pitying laugh. Don't worry, love. I wouldn't touch your cast-offs with a barge pole. Vanessa stormed out, heels stabbing the marble like gunfire. The red Aston Martin roared away in a spray of gravel. The hall felt deathly quiet. James collapsed into the nearest chair and dropped his head into his hands. She'll do it. She'll burn the whole thing down. Then we'll rebuild, Lady Margaret said, fierce and calm. Ashfords have survived wars, recessions, and worse gossip than Vanessa Reed can dream up. Chloe watched them both, anger still simmering but now mixed with something uncomfortably like sympathy. You didn't have to blow your life up for us, she said quietly. James looked up, eyes bloodshot. Yes, I did. I've spent 5 years building everything on lies. Don. Before Chloe could answer, her phone buzzed. Sophie's name flashed on the screen, voice tight with panic. Chloe, you need to come home now. Lily's burning up and she's been sick nonstop. I'm proper scared. The world tilted. I'm on my way. She hung up, legs already moving. Lily's poorly. I have to go. My driver now, Lady Margaret ordered. I'm coming with you, James said, already grabbing his keys. You don't. She's my daughter. The words came out raw but certain. I'm coming. There was no time to argue. Chloe nodded once, sharp, and they ran for the car. The drive across the Dales was a blur of Chloe ringing Sophie every 2 minutes, each update worse than the last. When they screeched to a halt outside the little Headingley flat, Chloe took the stairs 2 at a time. Lily lay curled on the sofa, pale as milk, damp curls stuck to her forehead, shivering under 3 blankets. Mummy, a weak whimper. Chloe dropped to her knees, hand to Lily's forehead. Jesus, she's on fire. James knelt opposite. Face ashen, how long? Hour, maybe less, Sophie said, wringing her hands. Cowpole's done nothing. We're going to hospital. Now. James scooped Lily up as gently as if she were made of glass. She burrowed instinctively into his neck, tiny arms looping round him, even half delirious. Something in Chloe's chest cracked wide open at the sight. They flew to A&E at Leeds General. James carried her through the rain, Chloe sprinting beside them. Nurses whisked Lily straight through. James tried to follow and was stopped at the curtain. She's my daughter, he pleaded, voice breaking. The nurse looked at Chloe. Chloe nodded. Let him in. Inside the cubicle, they stood on either side of the narrow bed while Dr. Adib, calm unkind-eyed, examined Lily. Viral gastroenteritis. Nasty, but not dangerous. She's dehydrated. We'll get fluids in and keep her a few hours. Bring the temperature down. Chloe sagged against the wall in pure relief. They moved Lily to a side room. The moment the cannula went in, Lily wailed. James took her free hand and launched into the most ridiculous Geordie Duck impression Chloe had ever heard. Lily actually giggled through her tears. That duck's drunk? She croaked. Oi, this is premium Yorkshire duck. I'll have you know, James protested, quacking even worse. And just like that, Lily laughed. Properly laughed, for the first time all day. Later, when Lily finally dozed, fever falling, Chloe and James sat in plastic chairs either side of the bed, speaking in whispers. You're good with her, Chloe admitted grudgingly. She's incredible, he whispered back, eyes never leaving Lily's sleeping face. You've done everything right. Had to. He dragged his chair closer until their knees almost touched. Chloe, I need to tell you all of it. No more hiding. She folded her arms, guarding herself, but didn't stop him. When I met you in York, I was drowning. Dad had just died. The estate, the company. Everything felt like it was crushing me. I couldn't be James Ashford for one more day. So I became Jamie. No surname, no past, no future. Just a bloke with a rucksack. He swallowed hard. Then I walked into that cafe and saw you pulling pints, with flour in your hair and the worst jokes known to man. And for the first time in months, I could breathe. Those 3 weeks were the only time I remember being happy. Truly happy. I fell in love with you, Chloe. Hard and I was too much of a coward to tell you the truth. Tears pricked her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. You decided for me, she said, voice low. You decided I couldn't handle your world, so you vanished. Left me pregnant and alone. I didn't know. His voice cracked. If I'd known about her, you still left? A tear escaped. She dashed it away. 5 years of bedtime stories about a daddy who was traveling. 5 years of wiping her tears when the other kids had fathers at sports day. 5 years. James. I know. He reached for her hands. This time, she let him take them. I know. And I will spend the rest of my life making it up to both of you, if you'll let me. A small rustle from the bed. Lily stirred, eyes fluttering open. Mummy? Thirsty. Chloe reached for the water cup, but Lily's gaze landed on James and stayed there, solemn and serious. You're still here? She said, surprised. Told you I wasn't going anywhere, he answered softly. Lily studied him for a long moment. Then, in the way only a 4-year-old can, she announced, with perfect certainty, You're my dad. The room stopped. James made a choked sound, tears spilling instantly. Chloe's breath caught. Lily, Grandma Margaret showed me baby pictures, Lily said matter-of-factly. You've got my eyes. And my dimple. You're my dad. James knelt by the bed, trembling. Yeah, sweetheart. I'm your dad, and I'm so sorry I wasn't here before. Lily reached out one tiny hand and patted his cheek, the foreline tugging slightly. Sioka, you're here now. And just like that, with the simplicity only children possess, she forgave him. James rested his forehead gently against her little hand and cried silently, while Lily, satisfied, drifted back to sleep, still holding his finger. Chloe watched them both, walls crumbling, heart wide open, terrified and hopeful all at once. Chloe stood in the hospital room doorway, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Lily, half asleep, kept testing the word like a new toy. Da. Are you staying forever now? James looked across the bed at Chloe, eyes red, silently begging. Chloe wanted to cling to every ounce of anger she'd carried for 5 years, but Lilia's little face was shining with a happiness she'd never been able to give her alone. He'll visit a lot, Chloe said at last, voice gentle but steady. We'll take it slow. Yeah, get to know each other properly. Lily yawned. A huge yawn, and nodded. Kay? Mummy. She was asleep again. Within seconds, James stayed on his knees by the bed, still holding her hand as though it might vanish. When he finally stood, the look he gave Chloe was pure resolve. Thank you, he whispered. It's not for you, she reminded him. It's for her. I know, and I'll prove I'm worth it every single day. In the weeks that followed, Lily's recovery was swift, but her new favorite sentence was not. Mummy, when's Daddy coming? It was the 4th time before breakfast. Chloe was folding tiny socks in their cramped Headingley flat, while Lily colored in mostly the table when the buzzer finally went. Lily shot to the door like a rocket. It's him. James stood on the step with a grin and an enormous carrier bag. Hiya, princess. He swung her up into a hug the moment the door opened. He produced Play-Doh, a Peppa Pig coloring book, and a plush unicorn, almost as tall as Lily herself. Lily squealed and buried her face in sparkly purple fur. You'll have her rotten, Chloe warned, but she was smiling. I've got 5 birthdays and 5 Christmases to catch up on, James said, completely serious. And catch up. He did. He came almost every day, never pushing Chloe's boundaries. He took Lily to Roundhay Park, attempted and failed plats, read her the entire Gruffalo collection in funny voices. One Saturday he insisted on cooking Sunday lunch at Blackwood Hall. You can cook? Chloe asked, arms folded, watching him tie Mrs. Hargreaves' spare apron round his waist. Absolutely. Absolutely. YouTube is very confident in me. It was a disaster of legendary proportions. He boiled the potatoes dry, set the Yorkshire puddings on fire, and somehow turned gravy into glue. Lily laughed until she fell off her chair. Daddy made the smoke monster! Lady Margaret appeared in the doorway, horrified yet amused. James Ashford, what have you done to my aga? Modern art. He offered weakly, waving a tea towel at the shrieking smoke alarm. Mrs. Hargreaves banished him from the kitchen and produced a perfect roast in 20 minutes. But Chloe couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed so hard. Later, after Lily passed out on the sofa, surrounded by new toys, Chloe and James sat on the moonlit terrace, sharing a bottle of red. You're trying, Chloe said quietly. I'm doing my damnedest, he replied, even if my damnedest involves arson by gravy. Comfortable silence settled. Chloe, any chance you're starting to forgive me? Even a bit. She considered. I'm starting to believe you've changed. That's not the same thing, but it's a start. He smiled like she'd handed him the world. The next day, that fragile peace shattered. Heels stabbed across the entrance hole like machine gun fire. Vanessa stormed in, eyes wild. So it's true. You're playing happy families with the cleaning girl. Chloe scooped Lily up protectively. I don't live here. Chloe said calmly, and it's none of your business. It's very much my business while I'm still wearing his ring, Vanessa hissed. X-ring, James said, appearing at the top of the stairs, faced like thunder. Vanessa, we're done. Not publicly. We're not. You haven't announced anything. So as far as the world's concerned, we're still engaged. Lily hid her face in Chloe's neck, frightened by the shouting. You're scaring my daughter, James said, voice low and lethal. Your daughter, Vanessa gave a shrill laugh. Some illegitimate brat appears, and you just roll over. This will destroy you, James. All of you. Lady Margaret appeared, Arctic. Leave my house, Vanessa, or I'll have security throw you out. Vanessa turned purple. Make him tell the world he's made a mistake. James stepped between them, shielding Chloe and Lily. My only mistake was ever thinking status mattered more than love. Lily is my daughter, and I'm proud of her. I'm ending the engagement publicly. Today, Vanessa stared, realizing she'd lost. You'll regret this, she spat, and stormed out. Lily lifted her head. She was a mean lady. Yeah, pet, Chloe murmured, stroking her curls. She was. That very afternoon, James called a press conference on the steps of Ashford & Co. headquarters in Leeds. Chloe watched it on the mansion telly, Lily playing at her feet. James faced the cameras. No notes, no armor. 5 years ago, I ran from my responsibilities after losing my father. In doing so, I hurt the most important person I'd ever met. What I didn't know was that she was pregnant with my daughter, Lily. I only met my little girl a few weeks ago, and I've missed 4 years. I can never get back. But from this day forward, I will be the father she deserves, whatever the cost. The press went feral, questions flying, flashes blinding. He raised a hand. I'm also announcing the end of my engagement to Vanessa Reed. My priority is my daughter and earning back the trust of the woman I never stopped loving. Back at the mansion, Chloe was openly crying. Sophie, visiting with popcorn, squeezed her hand. He actually did it. He did, Chloe whispered. Social media exploded, mostly with support. #DeadGhouls trended in Yorkshire by tea time. Vanessa's attempted victim posts backfired spectacularly when old clips surfaced of her being rude to waiters. Karma's got good taste, Chloe muttered. Then the paparazzi descended. They camped outside the flat, followed Chloe to soft play, even accosted her in Tesco. James hired discreet security within hours, and Lady Margaret insisted they move into Blackwood Hall, just until it calms down. Chloe resisted, until a photographer scared Lily at nursery gates. That night, they moved in properly. Lily thought she'd died and gone to Disney. Her new bedroom was bigger than their old flat, complete with a four-poster and a mountain of cuddly toys. It's a castle, Mummy. It's temporary, Chloe said, still dazed. One afternoon, a particularly aggressive reporter cornered Chloe outside Waitrose. James appeared like a storm cloud, stepping between them. She said no comment. Respect it or deal with me. The man backed off fast. Later, in the quiet of the library, Chloe found James staring into the fire. Thank you, she said. For today, for all of it. He closed the book he hadn't been reading. "Protecting you too is the least I owe you." She sat opposite. "I'm starting to believe you really have changed." Hope flared in his eyes. "That's all I need." Lady Margaret burst in, unusually flustered. "James, I need you in your father's old study. There was a locked drawer, he always said, held something important. I've never been able to open it, but I've just found a key taped under the desk." The three of them hurried to the late Mr. Ashford's untouched study, dust sheets still over half the furniture. Lady Margaret slid the tiny brass key into a drawer none of them had ever noticed before. Inside lay a single thick envelope addressed in a shaky hand. "To my son, when he's ready." James opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter and a smaller sealed envelope marked for Lily on her 18th birthday. James began to read aloud, voice thick. "My dearest James, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've probably made the mess I always feared. You've either run from it or faced it. I hope it's the latter. I wasn't the perfect father. I know the weight I placed on your shoulders, but I've never been prouder than when you showed kindness over ambition. There is something you need to know. The company accounts ULL find in the safe. Combination. Your mother's birthday. Money your uncle tried to hide. It's yours, and any family you choose, not the firm. Use it to build the life you want, not the one expected of you. Love always, Dad." James's voice broke on the last word. Lady Margaret was openly weeping. Chloe felt tears slip down her own cheeks. James looked up, eyes fierce with purpose. "He knew," he whispered. "He always knew I'd come back different." He turned to Chloe, letter still in his hand. "I'm not that scared boy anymore. I choose you and Lily. Always. If you'll have me." Chloe looked at him, then at the envelope marked for their daughter's future, then at the man who had finally stopped running. She took a shaky breath. "Slow," she said, smiling through tears. "But yes, James Ash will have ya." He pulled her gently into his arms, careful, reverent, like she might still vanish. Lily's voice echoed down the corridor. "Mummy, Daddy, I found a secret passage." They laughed through the tears. The three of them already a family, ready for whatever came next. Drawers, files, bookshelves. James examined the large mahogany desk, opening every compartment. "There's something odd here," he murmured, tapping the side of a drawer. "It sounds hollow." He pressed on different parts of the wood until there was a soft click. A hidden panel opened on the side of the drawer, revealing a secret compartment. Inside was a yellowed envelope, sealed with red wax. On the envelope written in elegant handwriting, "For my son, James. Open when you're ready to come home." The three of them froze, staring at the envelope. Julia noticed James's hands trembling as he picked up the letter. Evelina covered her mouth, tears already forming. "He left that for you," Eleanor whispered. "All these years, it's been here waiting." James held the envelope with great care, like it was made of glass. His hands were shaking so much Julia had to resist the urge to reach out and steady them. "Do you want us to step out?" Julia offered gently. James looked at her, then at his mother, his eyes full of unshed tears. "No, stay, please. I need you here." Eleanor stepped closer, placing her hand on her son's shoulder. Julia stood on the other side, offering quiet support. With trembling fingers, James carefully broke the wax seal. As if damaging it would be a betrayal, he opened the envelope and pulled out several handwritten pages. The handwriting was unmistakable. It belonged to the father he had loved and lost. James took a deep breath, preparing to read the words. He unfolded the pages reverently. His voice shook as he began to read out loud. "My dear James, if you're reading this, it means you've finally come home. And it also means I am gone before I could tell you what I need you to know." James's voice cracked, and he had to pause. Eleanor gently squeezed his shoulder. Julia remained quiet, giving him space. He took another breath and went on. "I know I've put too much pressure on you. I see it in your eyes every day. The weight of expectations, of the Hartford name, of the future I mapped out for you, and I deeply regret that." A choked sound escaped James's throat as the tears finally came. "You're not just my heir, James. You're my son. And as your father, My main duty should have been your happiness, not preserving a business legacy. Eleanor covered her mouth as her own silent tears began to fall. If you feel the need to run, then run. Go find out who you are without the weight of our name. Live like a regular person for a while. Discover what brings you joy. You have my blessing, even if I can't say it in person. James had to stop again, openly sobbing now. Moved by instinct, Julia stepped forward and placed her hand on his arm. He held onto it like a lifeline. Hartford Investments will survive without you for a few months, or even years. But you won't survive if you don't learn how to breathe. So breathe, my son. Live, love, make mistakes, and when you're ready, come home. James's voice was so broken it was barely audible as he read the final lines. I know you'll come back a better man, stronger, more complete, and I'll be proud of you no matter what path you choose. With all my love, your father. The silence that followed was deep and sacred. James held the pages against his chest, crying like a child. Eleanor wrapped her arms around him, crying, too. Julia felt her own face wet with tears. The letter changed everything. It didn't justify the abandonment or erase the pain, but it explained. It gave context. It showed that James hadn't just run away selfishly. He had followed advice, a blessing from a father who saw his son was drowning. He knew. James sobbed into his mother's shoulder. He knew I was falling apart, and he gave me permission to go. And he was right, Elialana said through her tears. You needed to go. You needed to find yourself. James finally pulled away, wiping his face with his hands. He looked at Julia with red, swollen eyes. Do you understand now? His voice was hoarse. Why I did what I did. Julia nodded slowly. I understand it better. It doesn't excuse leaving me without a word. It doesn't excuse Mia growing up without her father. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But I understand that you weren't just being cruel. You were lost. Completely lost, James agreed. And when I met you, Julia, for the first time in months, I felt found. But then I got scared. I thought if you knew the truth, you'd only see me as the broken heir, not as Eric, the guy who made you laugh at the cafe. Julia stepped closer to him, her voice gentler now. You were a fool not to let me choose, but I can see now that you were hurting. But where? James took her hands in his hope, shining through his tears. Can we try again? Not as Eric and Julia, but as James and Julia. Start fresh, but this time with complete honesty. Julia felt her heart speed up. Part of her wanted to say yes right away, but the mother part, the one who had protected me alone for years, hesitated. Maybe, she finally said, but slowly. And you need to prove consistency, James. Not just sweet words and big gestures. Real consistency, day after day. I will, he promised sincerely. Every day for you and for Mia. Eleanor, still wiping away tears, smiled through the emotion. I think we need some tea or something stronger. Julia laughed, the tension easing. Definitely something stronger. In the weeks that followed, something shifted between Julia and James. Their conversations became easier, more natural. They laughed together, especially at James's hopeless attempts to do simple things, like the time he tried to put together a dollhouse for Mia, and ended up with 3 leftover pieces, and the whole thing leaning sideways. How do you even end up with extra pieces? Julia asked, laughing as she looked at the wobbly structure. Special talent, James replied with a crooked smile. Clearly, those pieces are decorative. Decorative? Julia raised an eyebrow. They're structural screws. Technical details. Mia just laughed, thinking the crooked house was perfect as it was. Or when James tried to do Mia essayer and ended up with something that looked like a bird's nest. Daddy, my hair looks funny, Mia said, staring into the mirror. It's artistic, James offered, not sounding too sure. Julia had to completely redo it, but she was laughing so hard she could barely hold the comb. Those small mistakes, those honest efforts showed something important. James was present. Was trying. And Julia could feel her guard slowly starting to come down. One evening, after Mia had gone to sleep, James and Julia sat outside in the garden under the stars. The conversation drifted from light topics to deeper ones. "Do you think we can really make this work?" James asked, his voice quiet in the dark. "The two of us as a real family?" Julia looked up at the stars, thinking. "I think it depends on you proving you won't run the moment things get hard." "I won't," James said firmly. "Never again." "Promises are easy to make under pretty stars," Julia replied, but there was a smile in her voice. "Keeping them in the morning when Mia wakes up at 6, yelling because her stuffed unicorn fell off the bed. That's the hard part." James laughed. "I'm ready for 6 a.m. Unicorn emergencies. I'm ready for all of it." Julia finally looked at him, and their eyes met in the soft light of the garden. Something passed between them. A spark, a possibility, a future that maybe could be real. James leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, but Julia didn't. Their lips met in a soft kiss, hesitant, full of years of hurt and newly found hope. When they pulled apart, Julia was blushing. "That was a beginning," James offered, hopeful. "Maybe," Julia admitted, but she was smiling. In the days that followed, they began cautiously talking about the future, what it would mean to raise Mia together, where they might live, how they'd balanced responsibilities. That's when the call came. James was in the office when his phone rang. A headhunter from New York, representing one of the biggest investment firms in the country. They wanted James as their CEO. An incredible salary, international prestige, a chance to start over in a new city far from the scandals of Savannah. "It's an amazing offer, Mr. Hartford," the cheerful voice said on the other end. "We'll need an answer within a week." James hung up, stunned. New York, a complete change, a chance to run again. The realization hit him like a punch. It would be easy to accept, to convince himself it was about money, about his career. But it would be a lie. It would mean running away from the hard work of building something real here in Savannah. He had to tell Julia, but when he saw her later that day, the way she smiled at him, the trust just starting to appear in her eyes, he hesitated. "Everything okay?" Julia asked, noticing the look on his face. "Yeah, just work." He lied and instantly hated himself for it. But before he could say more, Julia's phone rang. It was Eleanor asking her to come to the office to go over some papers. Julia left, and James was alone with his secret. The New York offer burned in his mind, and for the first time in weeks, he felt the old urge to run creeping back in. The next morning, James woke up to Mia jumping on his bed. "Daddy, Daddy, wake up!" He opened his eyes, seeing her excited little face inches from his own. "Good morning, sweetheart. What time is it?" 6:30. "Grandma said there are pancakes." James groaned but smiled. This was what mattered. Not tempting offers in New York. Not convenient escapes. This little girl jumping on his bed at 6:30 in the morning. He picked up his phone and typed a quick email. "Thank you very much for the offer, but I must decline. My place is here with my family. Sincerely, James Hartford." He hit send before he could change his mind. Over breakfast, Eleanor noticed something different about him. "You seem lighter," she said. "I am," James replied, watching Mia drown her pancakes in too much syrup. "I made an important decision." "Want to share later?" He smiled. "First, I need to talk to Julia." He found her in the garden reading while Mia played nearby. "Julia, can we talk?" Salou get up, closing her book. "Of course. Everything all right?" James sat beside her on the bench. "I got a job offer in New York, CEO of a major company." He saw her face pale, panic rising in her eyes. "You're going to?" she began, her voice trembling. "No," James cut in firmly. "I already turned it down." Julia blinked, confused. "What?" "I said no. I didn't even really consider it." He took her hands. "My place is here with you, with Mia, with my family." Julia felt tears of relief sting her eyes. "Are you sure? It's a big opportunity." "I'm absolutely sure." James squeezed her hands. "No career is worth more than my daughter than you." Julia couldn't help it. She hugged him tightly, burying her face in his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying." In the weeks that followed, James did more than stay. He transformed. He decided that if he was going to be a real father and partner, he had to learn how to live a normal life. Not the life of a millionaire heir with staff doing everything, but real life. The results were interesting, like the time he tried to make his own bed and ended up tangled in the sheets. "How did you get stuck?" Julia asked, finding him wrapped up like a burrito. "The bed attacked me," James replied, his voice muffled by the fabric. "Or the time he did his own laundry and threw a red shirt in with the whites. Everything came out pink." "Now you have a themed wardrobe," Julia said, holding up a pink pair of boxers. "Pink is masculine," James insisted, but his face matched the color. Trying to change a light bulb ended with James getting a small shock and yelling so dramatically that Mia thought a monster had attacked him. "Daddy's scared," Mia told Julia. "A little bit," Julia agreed, laughing. But every failure, every clumsy attempt, showed something important. James was trying. He wasn't just talking about change. He was living it. He started picking Mia up from school. The first time he got lost 3 times. Arrived late, sweaty, and flustered. But he kept trying, and within 2 weeks, he already knew all the teachers and the moms of the other kids. He learned how to cook basic meals. Burned a lot at first, but eventually managed to make pasta without setting the kitchen on fire. "It's edible," Julia said after tasting his spaghetti. "Is edible a compliment?" James asked. "From where you started, it's a miracle." Julia watched all of it, her walls finally crumbling for good. This wasn't the man who had run away 5 years ago. This was someone committed, present, desperately trying to be better. One night, James showed up at her bedroom door. "Can I come in?" "Of course." He sat on the edge of the bed, nervous. "I wanted to ask you something. Dinner? Just the 2 of us. Tomorrow night, Eleanor will stay with Mia." Julia felt butterflies in her stomach. "Like a date, like a day." James confirmed, "If you'll say yes." Julia smiled. "I'll say yes."